is Mr. V, and welcome to this video on drawing sections. Alright, here we have a contour map, and we've been given a line from point A to point B. And what we want to do is draw a cross-section of the land. So we want to draw a picture as if we are cutting the land down that line and then looking into the side, kind of like cutting a cake in half, and you can see the layers in the cake. We kind of want to do the same thing here with this piece of land, so we can see what the shape of the land is. Now this is going to take a bit of work, and we're going to use our ruler quite extensively. So there's my ruler, and I'm going to start by simply measuring out how long this line is. So using my ruler, I can measure this out, and that looks to be 13.6 centimeters. Now what I'm going to do to draw my diagram, I'm going to draw my horizontal axis to be that same length. So 0 up to 13.6. And that's where I'm going to draw my graph. Okay, going back to my map, I've got heights of 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, and this one goes up even more to 350. So I need to be able to fit at least up to 350, and preferably up a little bit to 400 meters into my diagram. So I am thinking if I use 8 centimeters, I can make each centimeter worth 50 meters, and we can use that to draw our axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it is very important that we do this to both sides. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to draw my vertical axis, and I'm going to label that from 50, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400. And so that I can do this accurately enough, I'm going to connect each of those lines with my pencil. It only needs to be very faint, just enough to see it, but obviously not important enough to be in our final product. And you could technically erase these at the end if you wanted to. I usually just leave them in. But if you wanted to make this a realistic picture, you can remove these lines. And you can tell that I'm going slowly to make sure that this is as accurate as I can make it. Okay. Let's label each of those heights. So 50 meters, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, and 400 meters. Now what we want to do is, for every point on this line where we know the height, and we know the height at each of the contour lines, for each point where we know the height, we want to plot that point onto the graph that we're making. So we want to know the height of each of those crossover points. Telling the height's easy, but we do need to measure them out so we can put them on our graph. So again, I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm just going to bulk measure these. So for each of these crossovers, I'm just going to measure how far away from point A they are. So this is 0.3, 1.0 centimeters, 1.6, 2.5. Over here, this one's a bit hard to read. That's where we are. That's 3.7. Coming across to this one, that's 6.8. 8.2, 10.1, let's see, this is where we are, That's 12.6, and then we finish at 13.6. Now that I've measured out all of those crossover points, I can put them on my graph. And very similar to our beginning, we just put our ruler on the bottom and we just copy the information. So my first crossover was at 0.3, then 1, then 1.6, 2.5, 3.7, 6.8, 8.2, 10.1, 12.6, and the last one is right at the end. We don't actually have to say how far away it is, we just want to mark the points. And then lastly, what we need to do is, for each of these points, put a dot on a graph to represent how high that is. So, looking at this, my first contour is 350 meters high. So I'm going to place a dot on the 350 meters line. There we go. We know that that's how high our land is. The next point is at 1.0 and it's 300 meters high. 300 meters high. Next crossover is at 250 meters. Using my ruler again, trying to make this as accurate as possible. The next crossover is at 200 meters. 200 meters. And then we kind of dip down towards the river and then back up to 200 meters. Back up to 200 meters. Then we kind of rise a little bit, almost up to 250 meters, but not quite. And then we come back down to 200 meters. So it's a bit of a roller coaster ride going on here. Then next we are at 150, then down to 100. 150, down to 100. And then we go a little bit downhill, and then we kind of move back uphill. So kind of moving diagonally back up the hill. Back up to 100. And then we move up a little bit to finish around about there. So I've mapped out all of the points. And I'll do the next part in pencil, simply to illustrate that this is only an approximation. But we can clearly see that we start with a slope down. This is just a game of connect the dots. We slope down. And then remember, we kind of dip down towards this river and then back up. So we want to show that we dip down and then come back up. Then our hill rose slightly until it was almost 200 meters, and then we came back down, and the next couple of dots are gently moving down, and then we start curving back up to 100 meters, and then moving up a little bit to finish. So if we were to cut our land down this line, this is the picture that we would see. And so if you were to walk from point A to point B, you'd be going downhill, splashing through the river, going back up this tiny little rise, and then back down the hill nice and gently. And that is how we draw a section for a piece of land.